Ole Miss takes on Washington State. We're going to talk to Daylan Flowers. We're going to talk about the single transfer portal window that got, passed today. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We bring in the Rebel Walks, Daylan Flowers, to talk Wazoo and take your comments in the third segment of the show. Remember, if you comment, put where you're commenting from. We want to shout that out as well, but we will deal with that in the third segment of the show. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and please give us a like, subscribe, and comment on your way out. Check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college and pro, is available. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. Let's get straight to it and bring in Daylan Flowers. Daylan, one thing that's interesting, there's rumors going around about injuries and all that availability for Washington State, and that's fine because it's Washington State. But I'm going to tell you something right now. Today I did my watch to break down the game, and tomorrow we talk about what I noticed from that game. But we'll talk about one thing real quick here. This might be the best passing attack that Ole Miss has seen this season.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I think the other argument would probably be Arkansas. And again, I think the Arkansas game really deceived a lot of Ole Miss fans in terms of, was there a lot of question marks that need to be had around this defense? And I said this with you around that time after that game, but I'll say it again. That Arkansas game, that was a really great game plan from Bobby Petrino. That was almost a perfect game from Taylor Green. But I think this Washington State team is one of those teams that it's easy to skip by because it's a team that you don't see often. It's a team that may not have the resonated history that compared to some of the other teams you may play in your conference. But this is a Washington State team that is schematically really, really good at football offense. This is an offense that passes the ball at all three levels really well, whether that's short passes, the play action in the middle of the field, and they have a really, really good deep ball as well in terms of when they need to get downfield to make some big plays happen, or that's before the half, or that's to get them out of tainted drives. This Washington State offense is really in a way, for me, a pro-style offense. They do so many things well, and they're putting their players in positions to make plays happen no matter the scenario, no matter the stance of the game. So I think Washington State is going to give this Ole Miss defense opportunities to really learn about themselves. What can they do better? What are they already doing well? And that's going to be able to bind for Ole Miss to moving into the I guess for most people calling it the roughest, toughest part of the schedule for Ole Miss this year in terms of going to Georgia and going to OU. So I think this bye week couldn't have come at a better time for Ole Miss. I think this Washington State game couldn't have come at a better time for Ole Miss. And I think this is a quality opponent. If you look back at just last year, this is an Ole Miss team that was supposed to be facing Wake Forest. And then through some different circumstances, they had to kind of maneuver. Washington State is a really, really, really
Wake Forest chickened out. Let's just call it what it is. They chickened out.
They chickened out. And you got to give props to Ole Miss and Washington State coming together in a short time frame last year and getting this deal done. And so Ole Miss fans should be excited. It's an 11 a.m. game, really the first one of the year. And I think it's going to give a different dynamic about the way this game is played. I think coming out early is going to be good for Ole Miss. I think coming off that bye week, you get a little bit rested, you get a little bit complacent, especially going 5-0. But I think this is going to be a really, really good football game for both teams. I think this is going to be a good game for Ole Miss defensively to test, to learn, and adjust the way they properly need to finish out the rest of this season against SEC opponents strongly and pivot in towards hopefully controlling their own destiny and making it into the college football playoff this year.
Yeah, if you look at the betting line in this game, Ole Miss is favored by 33.5 points. So let's not I don't want to confuse anybody with thinking that we're talking about a juggernaut. I'm talking about one thing that they do specifically well. One thing that they don't do well is run the ball. They've run the ball for a total of 500 yards this year. And of that 500 yards, 100 of them came from 5 explosive plays. They're not very good against the run, where they give up about 170 yards per game. They're not very good against the pass, where it is pretty easy to have that. Damon Williams, our old friend that used to be a commit to Ole Miss, threw for 4 touchdowns in the Apple Cup this year. This Washington State team will be a good team. They're coached by Jimmy Rogers, who used to be at South Dakota State. He built a little bit of an empire at South Dakota State. But they don't have the personnel yet. The best players on this team are kind of South Dakota State transfers. So they're kind of bottom G5, top FCS coming in to Oxford, Mississippi. So it's going to be difficult for the Ole Miss players to get going. What I took from Lane Kiffin's comments at his press conference, I don't think they practiced particularly well. That's my opinion, because Lane Kiffin appeared to be trying to get his team's attention through the media.
I love that point that you make, and I say I love it not just because I'm here with you and trying to be nice to you, but I do because that's not Lane Kiffin. And I've spent a lot of time with Lane Kiffin. I've listened to a lot of Lane Kiffin pressers. I've listened to him have a lot of conversations. He doesn't necessarily do that almost ever. And you think about it, why would he do that? And there's an optical amount of reasons in my head. Obviously, I'm not in that room with his players and having those conversations with him and actually know the actual reason. But it's easy for Ole Miss. And I asked him this after the LSU game, just what was his emotions after beating LSU? And at this point, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you systematically couldn't have asked for a better start to the season. 5-0, you defeated LSU. You're top of the SEC currently. I think coming in, Austin Simmons was so much hype. And with him not currently being a starter, Trinidad Chambers has come over and not only immersed himself as a great quarterback, but the Ole Miss fan base, the Oxford community has really just taken over the Trinidad Chambers hype. I mean, supporting him, the Trinidad flags. And mind you, he's not from Trinidad, but I still think it's hilarious that they have really just bought into basically, bring him in as a son. And I think this Ole Miss team has easily could have gotten after the LSU game complacent, in over your heads and, thinking about the future and what can be. But as a head coach, when those moments happen, how do you kind of adjust to bring your players back down to reality and understand season's not over? To understand that you still got games to play, to understand you still have obstacles to encounter. And sometimes you do have to maneuver to the media. And taking a little, divot in that form, and maybe it adjusts their players a little bit differently than usually the way he does it. But I think it's important to look at what Lane Kiffin said to the media yesterday. I think it's really important. If you have not checked out his press, to go do so. He said some very informative and interesting things. But I think as a head coach, he understands the totality of what's in store this weekend, what's in store over the next couple of weeks for Ole Miss, and what can be in store if they keep the main thing, and continue just focusing on one game at a time.
All right, before we take the first break, I do want to point this out. We are officially at the level that Ole Miss does not need style points any longer.
Yep.
All they need is a 1-point win over whoever they play. If they win the rest of the games by 1 point and look incredibly ugly doing it, they are going to have a bye and go to the college football playoff and the SEC championship. Every goal that you have, no longer do you need style points to achieve them. Now, that said, when we come back, we will talk about a couple of players that likely are not going to play in the ball game. We'll talk about somebody that is getting a little bit more playing time and somebody you might see as well. Coming back with Daylan Flowers right after this. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. All right, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, the right decision can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of the football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is so much fun. A simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, kind of like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you are in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves the game early and doesn't return, it's not going to count against you. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. You know, it's good to be right. Really is good to be right, honestly, if we're going to be real about it. All right. Do us a favor, like and subscribe and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to this on, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but keeps all of this free. If you want more, join the Insiders program. It's down in the subtext link below. There's no trolls, a 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel. So give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. All right, Daylan. One thing that's pretty interesting, the rumors coming out of practice right now, it looks like Prince Will Amonmielen is going to be very iffy. They'll probably hold him out and try and save him for Georgia. The same kind of goes for Nick Cole. Those two guys are likely not going to end up playing in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and for me, it sucks because those two players, Nick Cole and Prince Amonmielen, for me personally, have honestly been coming together really strongly for this Ole Miss defense over the last few games. I think Prince has been, he was in and out of the LSU game with seeing a big injury, and he's been a little bit inconsistent, throughout the season. But he was truly starting to find his grind in the Tulane game and the LSU game as well, in terms of just QB pressure, confusing the offensive lines for opposing teams, and using his brute size and athleticism to kind of divert opposing offenses to do different things and to run away from it. And as well as Nick Cole, I think he was really, really starting to fly around the secondary for the Pete Golding defense. And he was really starting to take the angle in terms of, for me personally, watching them out there, being one of the leaders for that secondary, and not only just a vocal leader, but physically. When you see your teammates, one of your guys that has been around doing things well in terms of flying around the field, making big plays in the open field, batting down passes in big moments. Nick Cole has really been essential for this Ole Miss team, and you don't want to risk those moments and those players right now when you have the hopes and potential going to the playoffs for a long season. So it sucks in terms of losing them in their momentum and their confidence, but as well, you have to play the game smartly. You don't want to risk aggravating something that doesn't need to be aggravated for those two important players for the Ole Miss defense. And so I think it's time for other players to obviously now step up, and other guys are going to be given the opportunity throughout practice and the Washington State game, it looks like this weekend, if they're not going to play. And I think there are guys within this team that can do that, but when the moment comes, are they really ready to? But we'll obviously see this Saturday against the Cougars.
So the rumors on the other side of that, the people that are vying for more playing time with that going, we're going to look at the back end of the defense where they say Jalen Braxton could potentially be filling that slot corner role. Now, Kapina Gushikin, I'm interested because he's a Washington State transfer. I expect to see him a good bit as well. But with Nick Cole getting out, there's probably a little bit of shuffling that's going to go on during the secondary. Jalen Braxton will probably see some of those reps at a slot corner. And I was told to keep my eye out and expect to see Cedric Beavers playing a little bit more in this game. It feels like he's starting to come on. But Cedric Beavers, he had the interception. Who was that against? That was against Tulane. Yeah. Tulane. And Cedric Beavers had a nice little stretch of plays in a row. Yeah. This looks like to be the game where you kind of get to see the next step. Is he ready for Georgia? Is he ready for Oklahoma? And we'll see with Cedric Beavers on the field.
Yeah, Jalen Braxton, Cedric Beavers, two guys that I've really been high on over the last few weeks as well. I think they've created a different environment, a different piece of competition, and they're both versatile players. They do a lot of different things really good. This defense has really rallied around Jalen Braxton, who's been in and out of injuries throughout fall camp and now. But when he's healthy, when he's out there for Ole Miss, he makes the defense better. He makes big plays happen. He is a great open field tackler, plays the ball really well, can play, like Steven said, in that slot corner role. But we have seen him a little bit in that secondary in terms of a safety position as well. he can do a lot of different things as well. And like he said about Cedric Beavers as well, getting that interception, the first interception of the season at that time for the secondary against Tulane was huge. I think that built their momentum to go into LSU and get another one for Wade Williams like they did. And I think he's continuing to find momentum. And this is the moment where guys like that are able to step up. Okay, you go to Georgia, you go to OU, do some game plans not work. Okay, then how do you have guys like Jalen Braxton and Cedric Beavers ready to go and put them in the moment, and you know you can be confident in them when they're put in those moments because they've already played and they've showed great tangibles to be really good players. So it's an ability for some of these guys to step up, and I think they're going to fit in really well. My thing about this team this year, and I may have said this with you or not, but this seems like a really, really just big, strong, connected family this year. I don't know what it is about this year and what this team is about, but they really just seem oriented around one another, not pointing the fingers at anyone. Everyone's taking accountability when they mess up, and really just uplifting everyone on this team. And I think guys like Jalen Braxton and Cedric Beavers, who necessarily may not start every weekend, will continue to obviously be brought into those roles with high praise from their teammates and their coaches, which I think is important for a culture, but culture helps you also win football games, which Ole Miss has done so far this season. And so excited about what those guys are going to be able to do, and excited about can the momentum for this Ole Miss defense continue to rally? Can they get a turnover for the third straight game, which I think is going to be really important going into that tough road stretch for Georgia and OU.
All right. The last 10 minutes of this show is all yours. We're going to take your comments. Remember, if you comment in the thread, put where you're commenting from so we can shout you out whenever we read your question as well. But that is coming up next. College football is back, and, I can't be much more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and the prices jumping at checkout. That is why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and you can get in to the Ole Miss versus Washington State game. The get-in price, about $50 on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. And also, this episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood, the neighborhood. These are the places that have become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base or the spot with the best wings in town to take to the Grove, the beloved local chains that have been rooted in your communities for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. There's a local spot in Oxford that has been the heart of the community for years. It's the kind of place where you walk in and everybody seemingly knows your name. No, I'm not talking about Cheers, but Phillips Grocery, a pretty cool establishment that might have the best burgers in all of Oxford. I know Handy Andy would have something to say about that. But you know what else they have? They have the fact that they're on Square. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. All right, Daylan, let's go ahead and hop in and start taking some questions as well. Dizzy Dean, who actually was a 1930s pitcher. There's an extra Z in that one, but for the St. Louis Cardinals, actually. He was the Gas House Gang, right?
He was.
Yeah, Hotty Toddy, Dizzy. And 33 Drummer says Hotty Toddy from Nanawa, Mississippi. Get it done, Rebels. Is Nanawa, is that where didn't we have an offensive lineman that came from there recently? Like Caleb Warren? I think that was him.
I'm not going to lie on camera with you, my friend. I really don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think it was Caleb Warren, but, we'll see what happens. David Gibson is saying hotty toddy from Pensacola, Florida. Thanks for watching, David. David watches a ton of videos each and every show. David Chambers says he's coming to you from Carmack, Mississippi. David, where is Carmack, Mississippi? I grew up there. I grew up in the state of Mississippi, and I have no idea where Carmack is. All right. So David also says, I feel like this is going to be a tune-up game for after the bye week. And that's true on a couple of levels, Daylan. First of all, you want to get the timing back before you go to Georgia, because that Georgia game is going to be difficult, and Washington State provides that opportunity. But Washington State does a lot of the stuff, especially offensively, that Ben Arbuckle, who came from Washington State, did. So the offense is going to look similar whenever you get to Oklahoma. All of that stuff is interesting as far as a perfectly placed game for the two next things, because Washington State, although they're not a Power 4 team, they're not. Ole Miss got a waiver because of what Wake Forest decided to try and pull. But Washington State still has Power 4 level players across the field. They're going to be able to pressure the quarterback, things like that.
Yeah, I think if you're the Ole Miss fan perspective, how are you looking at this Washington State game? I think three major things. Defensively, first is how do you divert the Washington State offense to try and run the ball a little bit more, because they're so pass heavy, and which would divert them away from their original game plan. LSU has a great pass offense essentially, but their run game has been very lackluster this year, which has not allowed their passing game to honestly get going in ways that I think they've wanted. And Ole Miss did a great job at that. Secondly, the Ole Miss offensive line has to continue to protect Trinidad Chambers. They've done a great job through that. Starting stance from only allowing one sack, and he's really benefited from it. And I think they're going to have to continue doing it again, but avoid shooting yourself in the foot. And that's on both sides of the field. The amount of penalties against LSU was unacceptable. I do know that some of those, penalties were a little questionable, but at the end of the day, you do kind of just have to move on and move forward with it. But the penalties have been a little bit of a problem on all three phases for Ole Miss this year. And you want to go into this Washington game and learn what you've done from the first 5 games and move on from those moments. And you have to remove shooting yourself in the foot if you want to beat Washington State, and if you want to have any chance at all to go to Athens and Norman, Oklahoma, and come away with the win.
Yeah, the one thing with Washington State to remember is their lack of a running game means there's probably going to be a good bit of drop 8 in this game. Yeah. If you saw the game plan they had against LSU, I think they're going to run that back a little bit. David Gibson is asking 62-10. I mean, it's possible. They're 33-point favorites, so it wouldn't surprise me, but we'll see exactly how it goes. David Chambers with the Super Chat, best podcast by far on the web. Love you, Stephen, for keeping it real about our Rebels. Thank you very much, David, for tuning in and watching the show. I try to make this as fun as possible. The perspectives of as many people that I can find to talk about Ole Miss, that's what I do. Next week, I'm going to have John Forcade on Monday from Cabo. He's going to get on the show. Tuesday will be Todd Wade next week. And Wednesday will be Bill Flowers. I mean, we've got some great perspectives for what could happen as well. David Gibson, do we stick with a 3-man rush and a drop 8 for Washington State? Yes, I covered that. I do think they are going to stick with the drop 8 as much as possible, because Washington State does run a variation of the air raid. And as long as you don't give up explosive plays and you force them to drive the ball, they're going to complete passes. They're going to make plays because they're very good at throwing the football. But if it gets in 3rd and long and you can kind of turn it loose, the SEC speed and the length can kind of take over, because they've had a problem this season with turnovers. They had 5 first-half turnovers against North Texas. They got beat 59-10 by North Texas in that might be their only road game that they've played this season so far, other than the Ole Miss game. So they're going to come down to the humidity and Oxford, Mississippi, and all of that. There's a lot of stuff working against Washington State, but this is going to be a well-coached team. They just might not have the dudes yet.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I wanna be honest. Can you really I want to give props to Pete Golding to have enough belief in his defense to run a 3-man rush, and they use it and do it effectively against LSU. And it works to almost perfection in a way. So it speaks to the volumes of confidence he has in his players, but as well, the ability to change and make adjustments, according to opponent every weekend, and still be able to do what they need to do to win games. And proving to Timothy's point right here as well.
Yeah, and where he says Pete Golding is putting them in the perfect spot. William Bronson just posted Tupelo's Braylon Williams committed to Ole Miss, a big-time cornerback prospect. I haven't seen that commitment just yet. I'm not doubting that it happened, but I'll look that up as well shortly after we get done with the show tonight. And Bronson also says the offense with Trinidad should excite Knight to come home from Auburn. That's a Deuce Knight thing, and run this offense. Now, okay, listen, Daylan, this is my hot take, and I'm about to record the SEC squad show that's going to air on Thursday night. I'm about to record that at 9 o'clock. I genuinely think that Auburn's about to beat Georgia. I genuinely believe that. And that's because the game is at night in Jordan-Hare. Alabama has talent all over the field as 4- and 5-star players, and Georgia just hasn't looked right. If it's a weird game, this feels like the game that Hugh Freeze gets.
I hate to unfortunately agree with you because, I'm really wishing the worst for Auburn Tiger football at all times. But I think that Georgia is battling really hard this season. I think you go to Neyland Stadium and come away with a win is huge in the fashion that they did. But then you still saw a lot of miscues in those games. You still saw a lot of miscues in losing to Alabama, and some things as well against Kentucky that even though they won by a landslide, I thought that this is not the Kirby Smart Georgia football team that I've seen over the last few years. I think Auburn has competed really strongly this year. Maybe should have come away with a few more wins than they have, and they will still be ranked. But I think Auburn has the capabilities of beating Georgia this year. I think they have the capabilities of doing it in their home environment because when Jordan-Hare is rocking, it's one of the best atmospheres in the country. And I think that they are honestly going to put it all out on the line this weekend. I think Hugh Freeze kind of understands the magnitude of this game and what this season may hold for his future at Auburn. So you wouldn't be surprised if you kind of see Hugh Freeze throw it all out there this weekend to get a win for his Tigers.
All right, the Revolution, hotty toddy from Brandon, Mississippi. Who you got in the Bama-Mizzou game? Listen, couple of things. In the history of the Southeastern Conference, that's 1933, I think. Teams have beaten ranked opponents without a bye week 3 times in a row. 3 teams have beaten ranked team with no bye week. This will be the 3rd ranked team that Alabama has played in a row without a bye week. And also, I think that Missouri might be the most underrated team in the Southeastern Conference. So I'm going to go with the Missouri Tigers in this game.
Roll Tide. That's all I gotta say. Don't hate me, Ole Miss fans, but Roll Tide.
Yeah. David Chambers said it's between Vaden and Kosciuszko. Okay, that's pretty good. Thank you. Jeff Ferguson from Pontotoc, Mississippi. Personally, I think Ole Miss will run the table. As far as Washington State, well, we can't wait for Georgia and Oklahoma, which will win and see this team differently. And do we keep everything vanilla this week to keep schemes off of Tate? I don't know. I think there's some stuff they can do with Trinidad that's different to throw Georgia off. And I think that Lane Kiffin is going to play quarterback games into the Georgia week with Austin Simmons and Trinidad to try and make Kirby work. But I think after playing LSU, pretty much everything's on tape. I mean, there's a couple of wrinkles that can happen here or there, but I think they kind of emptied everything there.
Definitely. For me personally, the LSU game was the biggest game of the season. I know, there may be an argument from other people's opinions, of course, with Georgia and Oklahoma, but I think that the comeback after last year, losing in Baton Rouge, and just the back and forth, it kind of seems jokingly, but also sometimes serious with Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin. That Ole Miss LSU game was something that Ole Miss really, really wanted to take care of this year.
All right, Stanley Cannon, do we go 12-0, 11-1, or 10-2 in the regular season? I think this team is ready to take the next step. D-line is continuing to get better, week by week. That's the key. He's from Dallas, Texas, by way of West Point, Mississippi. I think this team will go as far as the defensive line will take them, honestly. If Cam Franklin and William Eccles keeps taking that steep learning curve that they've been going on and doing really well right now, by the end of this year, that defense is going to be dominant. It's going to be one of those things like, what happened here? If not, you might have to outscore some people, but the offense is good enough right now to do that. I predicted in July 10-2. So I'm going to stick with that. I have losses at Georgia and at Oklahoma because it's hard to win on the road. But if Ole Miss can get one of those two, everything's on the table.
Yeah, I think this team is ready to take the next step. They have seemingly won some close games this year that, I think you look at this team this year and last year, surprisingly, some of the games they lost last year, they didn't win in close game situations for a lot of different reasons. But I think Kewan Lacey is a big factor into that. Having effective run games allows you to do things well, and it allows you to get out of situations that maybe you're hindered in. But I think one more big thing as well, this Ole Miss offense has facilitated all of their arsenals really well. They've attacked Harrison Wallace. They've attacked Daquan Wright. They've attacked Deuce Alexander and Deshaun Tribble and Caden Lee. They're getting everyone involved. And I think that's going to be important in terms of, earlier question was, do you think everything's on the table for Ole Miss? Yeah, it may be after the LSU game, but when you have that many weapons on the offensive side, it doesn't matter what it's on tape or not at this point. Ole Miss has the opportunity and arsenal to do a lot of great things with a lot of great receivers. And I'll even throw Caleb Odom in there as well, who I'm really, really big on. So I think this Ole Miss offense, if they're able to continue to utilize their arsenal, they're going to be really, really a scary force for opposing teams this year.
Yeah, and one thing that could pop up that nobody's seen yet is the addition of Traylon Ray whenever he's back and fully healthy. That is a way that they could do something a little bit different down the road. Anyway, Daylan, thank you so much for stopping by, man. We're going to stop it right here. If we didn't get to your question, we do apologize for that. Tune in every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central, and we are doing a live stream. And we also do live streams 2 hours before kickoff, immediately post-game, or of opportunities for the fans to kind of fellowship with everybody on there. Anyway, Daylan, thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll talk to you later, man.
Appreciate you, man. Take care, y'all. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy. All right. Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it is absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. In another big moment for Locked On, college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll talk to you later.